I told you we had something different for you this Friday, and instead of having our typical game of the week prep, we're going to bring on Alabama State head coach Eddie Robinson to break down his team and the Orange Blossom Classic. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, I'm Darian Gray, aka the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey's over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast, and with zero sugar and in a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use the code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your first order. The offer is only valid until September 30th and not good with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Oh my gosh, this was a fantastic interview that I did with Eddie Robinson Jr. It was very insightful, very entertaining. We got to carry on a conversation that we had at the Shrine Bowl about the role of a head coach, and that's where we start. But we finished with the moment that led to me redecorating my background and making this Mouth of the South sign visible, which I should have done a long time ago. So whether it's getting the insight or getting decorating tips, I guess, Eddie Robinson was a great guest. So let's get to it. All right, Coach Robinson, or better yet known as Mr. Tour de France. We were over here talking about cycling and bike riding before we came on the show. I'm trying to get like you riding around the city. Fingers crossed very soon. But we had a very brief, in my opinion, too short conversation at the Shrine Bowl about the relationship and the role that a head coach has in working with his offensive and defensive coordinators. And I would love if you had the opportunity to expound on that.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good way to start it. I mean, I think the biggest thing is, I tell my guys the offensive coordinator, his job is to try to score 30 points a game. Defense coordinator, he's trying to pitch a shutout, and as a head coach, I'm trying to win by 1 point. So that's kind of our three different roles, and I pretty much let those guys do it. I have a lot of confidence in both of the guys I have. Coach Ryan Lewis has been with us since year one, since we first got here. So he's going on his third year and has a lot of confidence in what he does. The kids really believe in him. So I'm just going to pretty much give my game management stuff. Hey man, hey, let's ease up on the zero blitz, or hey, let's bring more pressure, or I'll remind him of the situation. And it's the same thing with Coach Barnett on the other side. Hey, this is 4 down territory. It's third down, but you got a third and a fourth down in your back pocket. Or, before the 2-minute warning, before the end of the half, like, hey, you know what? We don't need to play defense again. So we want to get points, but the biggest thing, make sure we work the clock and that type of stuff so they don't have another chance offensively. So I'll give them the tips. I'm more of the game manager, and they call the plays. And I think it works pretty good for me. I wouldn't want to be a head coach that was also calling plays. I have my input on the plays. Like, hey, we need to run it. Let's take a shot. We've been a little bit vanilla, those type of things. Hey, let's bring pressure. Quarterback's not moving off his spot. So I just kind of put those little keys into their head. But then, hey, I trust them all week. They've been looking at a whole lot more film than me on the individual side of the ball, because I'm looking at everything. And then ultimately they have to make a call.
Do you ever feel a little antsy when talking about the defensive side, knowing that you're a defensive guy, want to give a little bit more input, and you're like, okay, no, I need to trust the guy that I hired to go ahead and make this decision on his own?
Yeah, I mean, I always felt like, coaching younger kids and everything, and just looking at the NFL and with the connections I had, I always felt like I would be an NFL linebacker coach. That was probably, my zenith of, I say, hey, all right, you want to be a coach, what you want to do? Because that way you kind of own the room. And the linebacker position is such a fun position to play. Like I played it and as the coach, because you get involved in everything. I mean, you're working the pass rush with the D lineman, you're dropping with the corners and safeties. You're playing all the special teams. So to be a linebacker coach was kind of where I wanted to be. So now as a head coach, I'm still like me and Bubba from last year, Bubba Adams. We would always meet and watch extra films. I'm gonna do the same thing with Cunningham and Rico this year. Just kind of giving them my input as a linebacker and a head coach. And so defensively, yeah, you kind of, but you got to trust those guys. You at certain times, like, hey, coach, won't we try this? Hey, man, this looks good. Or we had this blitz from back in the day. When they had this look, we did that. And so I think you got to give the input and the suggestion. But at the same time, you have to trust those guys. You hire them there. They're sitting there watching it every day. They know the players and they have that connection. So you have to believe in what they're doing. And everybody has to pull in the same direction.
And I heard somewhere that you were discussing about how calling games helped you learn how to be a better coach before you even became one. So I wanted to ask you this: calling games versus playing games, which one do you feel like had a greater impact on the coach you are today?
Well, I think it's two different aspects of it. I think the playing in the game kind of lets me relate to the player. So I know what it feels like to run in two-a-days. I know what it feels like to run sprints at the end of practice and like, man, coach, why we got to run another one? That type of stuff. And so and the toughness and the physicality that it takes to be a good football player. So that part of it was that. But from the standpoint of actually managing the game, yeah, but me being a broadcaster, for like 8-9 years, and you got to think if I'm doing sometimes 2 games a week, 10, 15 games a year. I mean, that's, and I'm talking to both head coaches. So now I'm getting the philosophy of both head coaches, college coaches, and I'm getting, what their blueprint is to try to win. And then I'm just second guessing them all the time. That's all commentators do. They
Right.
second guess. He went for 2. Well, I think he probably should have kicked the field. Well, you said that after I went for 2. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's easy for you to say what I should have did when I didn't get the 2-point conversion. But that's what commentators did. But from that standpoint, I was always trying to analyze to figure out, hey, what's the best way to get this team to a victory, and giving my opinion of it, and actually studying the team during the week. I put a lot of time into it. And so now when you get into those end of game, end of half situations, it's not foreign to me. And I did the same thing as a player. I was the guy on the field that was telling the coach, hey, Jeff, man, let's get a timeout. We can make him punt, get one more possession. So I was always kind of thinking the game, like thinking a couple series ahead. And that's the fun part of it. Middle of the first quarter, I'm already thinking about how to get us out of here at halftime. What's going on? Middle of the third quarter, I'm already thinking about the timeout situation and how we end the game. Middle of the fourth quarter, I'm in the last minute. I'm looking at possessions going back and forth. So I'm like way ahead of the game all the time. And so I think that's how you have to be. Try to anticipate what's going to happen. You try to manipulate it as much as you can. And of course, you have the interaction with the refs, which is always entertaining, to say the least.
Look, now you mentioned your playing days, and I got this picture from Coach James, and I want to flash it up here, and I'm going to tell everybody who's on the audio side exactly what this is, and I want you to take it from there. This is a picture of Coach Eddie Robinson, Coach James Williams, Coach Bubba McDowell, and Coach Chris Dishman, right? So you have Alabama State, Texas Southern, and I guess I'll say it, the Prairie View Panthers. Those guys up 290, you know what I'm saying? But but look, what does this picture represent more than just 4 coaches who are in the Southwestern Athletic Conference?
Yeah, I mean, so I still was living in Houston. My kids were raised in Houston, and love Houston. I'm from New Orleans, but I love Houston. It's like a second home to me. And the Love Your Blue Days with the Houston Oilers and those guys. Of course, Dishman and Bubba were the 2 older guys, and James and I, we were young guys. On that '93 team, and still trying to figure out were we good enough to play in the NFL? What was our niche? But having those veteran guys like that, and always just talking about SWAC football. We talked about the SWAC. We bragged about the SWAC. Those other guys at the bigger schools. Bubba coming from Miami, Dish coming from Purdue. Man, if I was in the SWAC, I would have done this. Man, you was in the SWAC, you would have failed out of school. You wouldn't have went to class on time. So we always gave them hard times going back and forth. But for all 4 of us to coach now, to be in the same conference and with 3 head coaches. And of course, James is my assistant head coach, and he's about as close to a head coach as you can be without being a head coach, as for what I rely on him to do. So it's just a great picture for us to be at that SWAC Media Day. Who would have thought it? Like all these years later, now we're all coaching in the same conference, the SWAC conference, no less.
And I want to get into your roster, man. I want to get into some of these guys, and I'm going to start it off with Andrew Body. Y'all know
Okay.
I'm a big Andrew Body fan. I told you at the Shrine Bowl, I'm a big Andrew Body fan. I ain't gonna say everything that we talked about at the Shrine Bowl, but what do you feel like Body brings to you on this team that maybe you didn't have in previous seasons that could take you over the top?
Well, I think it's the leadership ability. I mean, we've had some talented quarterbacks over the last 2 years, and so one of them's at Grambling, one of them's now at UTSA. So they're talented guys. So the talent aspect was there, and those guys were good leaders. I mean, they did a good job of bringing everybody together, getting in the huddle. But I think what Body has goes a little bit beyond that. And I think it's just natural. I think it's just his personality. You know, some leaders, you can teach a kid how to be a leader. You can encourage them to be a leader. And some kids just naturally have it. And so he's just a natural, leadership ability. I don't think, I'm sure his parents put a lot into him. I know both his mom and dad, and they did a great job with him. But a lot of that is just him. It's just his personality of what he is. And I think that's just his character. So I think that part of it, coming out here working, running the hill during the summer, he was running and lifting like he was a linebacker. And so, but that impresses the other guys when you have the quarterback that's competing at the same level that you are. He's not over there saying, hey, I'm a quarterback, don't want to bang up my knee, don't want to do this. He's in there grinding it out. And I think when it comes to clutch time, people play hard for a guy like that. And the quarterback is an extension of the head coach and offensive coordinator, because on the field, he's delivering the message. He's delivering it with confidence, and he's getting everybody to move into that same direction. So he does a great job of bringing that to the football team.
Yeah, now I'm gonna say what I think. I ain't expecting you to say this because then you're the coach. These are your guys. I genuinely believe that Andrew Body brings that quarterback position to a level that's gonna take y'all over the top. This is just my personal opinion. You ain't gotta say nothing to that because I know you had guys in the past. I don't want to be disrespectful to them, but I didn't have those guys. I think that this is gonna be the person who takes you over the top. But I want to flip over and look at the defensive side of the ball too, because you're a defensive guy. I consider myself a defensive guy, and I want to do that a little bit more as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor Meals. In the whole, I'm too busy to eat healthy used to be a good argument a while ago. And then Factor Meals came around and erased that completely because it only takes 2 minutes to heat this up. It only takes 2 minutes to warm up these fantastic meals that are also good for you. So what's the excuse now, right? Let's say you want a keto. Let's say protein plus, or maybe even a calorie smart deficit or a calorie smart diet. All of that is available with Factor Meals, right? And it's fresh, never frozen meals that are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So boom, put it in the microwave, 2 minutes, now you're eating. No more, I'm too busy for this, I'm too busy for that. It's up to you. They have over 35 different meals with 60 different add-ons, which means you'll never get tired because you're not eating the same thing every single day. I know that can be a problem too. So now it's on you. Head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50. Use the code lockedoncollege50 and get 50% off your first box. That is lockedoncollege50 at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Today's episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors. And it's real easy to go to eBay Motors. You type in ebaymotors.com. Doesn't matter what's going on with your car. Doesn't matter if you're having problems with your alternator. Doesn't matter if you need to get a new part. Maybe you just want to get some LED lights. I love some LED lights, right? Like I like to just be able to open up the door and boom, you flash something on the ground, or you inside the car and you have it lit up by your feet. All of those things are available at ebaymotors.com. It's not difficult. Maybe you want to ride in a little bit of style. Maybe you just need to ride, period, right? Sometimes your car ain't working. You can't ride. So it's not about style. It's about efficiency. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Power, speed, style, all of that is available at ebaymotors.com. So it's on you. Go to ebaymotors.com. Get their guaranteed fit when you put your car into the My Garage section, which means if it doesn't fit your car, your money comes back guaranteed. So go to ebaymotors.com. That is ebaymotors.com. For anything you need with your car, let's ride. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day for your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Football. It's here. It's time to listen to Spencer McLaughlin because he has everything you need to know on the FBS level. And I already know that you're checking me out for the HBCU. Let's get the full entire picture. And I'm here with head coach Eddie Robinson Jr. You flashed up the Eddie Robinson book before we got
Yeah.
on here, man. And I'll ask you this. I'm kind of curious about this, right? Of course, the whole Eddie Robinson Jr., I'm sure you got used to people asking if that's your dad, especially being a coach now. But growing up in Louisiana, was there ever any idea of like, I don't want to go to Grambling because of this? Like, I don't want to hear that if I'm at Grambling.
Nah, so I grew up going to the Bayou Classic, but my dad went to SUNO, Southern University in New Orleans, and most of the people in New Orleans are Southern fans just because of the proximity in the band, and we sent a lot of people there to play football, but also to be in the band. And so, and my dad worked at the Superdome, so I was going to the Bayou Classic every year as a kid, and we always rooted for Southern. So I was always rooting against Grambling from like 8, 9, 10 years old, and so. And back in those days, you're talking about the late 70s, early 80s when Eddie Robinson was a powerhouse. They were winning 9 and 10 games every year, and Southern would have the best band. The band won, but most of the time Grambling would win the game. So I grew up not being a Grambling State fan. I mean, being an Eddie Robinson fan because of him just being a classy guy and everything he was doing in college football, but not really growing up. So the thought of me going to Grambling probably never crossed my mind. I'd have went to Southern way. Actually, I applied to go to Southern. I'd have went to Southern way before I'd have went to Grambling.
Well, you know what? There you go. You got fun facts. I was always curious about that, man. But we said we were going to talk about some defensive players and your linebacker. You got Rico Dozier out of the transfer portal. You had Demarkus Cunningham he was still over here from last year. Bubba Adams is gone, right? How are you evaluating that linebacker room going into 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rico and Demarkus can probably be the best tandem of linebackers in the conference. I think both of them play at a really high level, and they're more of what you want out of the modern linebacker. And back in my day when we were playing, I guess the old folks say that when it was more I formation, physical, Bubba would have fit perfectly. And I told Bubba, I said, man, if you were 20 years younger, you'd have been a 4th round draft pick. You'd have fit perfect in what the NFL wanted. But now, with the speed and everybody playing on the edge and everything going fast. So now you're looking for those guys, more 6 feet, 212, 215, who can run a 4.5 and that type of thing. And I think if you look at the skill set of Demarkus Cunningham, we'll start with him. I mean, he was the guy that was right behind Bubba the last 2 years in tackles. And just, when we first got here, he wasn't playing a lot, playing on special teams, and then just evolved. And then just to see the transformation of it clicking. And I remember talking to him, I was like, man, I said, you right there. I like you looking like you see the play, you thinking the play, you got the answer to the test, but then you hesitate. It's like you thinking too much. I said, just go. He said, man, my girlfriend told me the same thing. I said, man, listen to your girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? So I guess he listened to me and her, and you could just tell, like, once he kind of got that taste of blood and made that first play, and the rest is he's just been flying around ever since then. And then Rico's a kid, we watched him in 2022, we played Pine Bluff for Thanksgiving Day, and he probably had around 15 tackles. And I was like, man, who is this 57 kid? Just like, we blocked everybody but him, and they ended up winning on Turkey Day Classics. He reminds me of that all the time. But he's from Abbeville, Alabama, and so he's coming back home. That's right down the street going towards Dothan. So him and DeQuan Kinsey, who's our running back, they both went to high school together. So to get both of them guys, especially Rico, here back on campus, I'm trying to figure out how we let them get out the state to start off with, but at least they're back home now.
You wasn't there, Coach. You wasn't there. That's what happened. You had to pull them in, man. Also, you got to send some love over to Mr. Cunningham's girlfriend, because you didn't get through to him.
I didn't. It wasn't me, because I had told him that same thing a couple of times, and so I guess once he heard it from her, and she must have told it. I'm gonna find out, because she must have told him that like the day before I did, because he was like, "Coach, she just told me the same thing," and then the rest of it just kind of hit. But when I tell you, a great kid. I mean, he's on track to graduate from Bessemer City. Just love coaching him. He just walks around with a great attitude, and he's one of those guys, like, he has a really serious mean streak. Like, when you see him, he's like, yes, sir, no, sir, real quiet. And I think one time he got like mad at somebody in practice and just went all the way. I was like, I asked the linebacker coach, Gresham, I'm like, man, this Cunningham kind of mean. Oh yeah, coach, he mean. Now don't let that soft spoken fool you now. So it kind of reminds me of myself. I was like that. Just more like an intellectual guy the rest of the time. But then when the lights came on, then you got to be a different person to be a middle linebacker. So,
Man, I know that had to be special. Being able to see these kids who
oh
remind you
man,
of yourself, that's got to be different, man.
yeah.
So,
Well, it's beautiful when they can't do something and then you explain it to them and then they try it and it don't work. They try it, it don't work. Then they try it and they eventually get it and it starts to work. And then they like, coach, man, it's like for me, that's like great. That and when they graduate, it's
mhm.
kind of like the proudest moment of as a coach when you say, hey man, I've made an impact on this kid. I've changed his life. I helped him to go into a different direction that he maybe not have meant wouldn't have went to if we didn't have this conversation as interaction.
Yeah, and first game of the year, right? Let's get into some of the football season a little bit before you really lean in on segment 3. But first game of the year, North Carolina Central, Miami, Florida, Orange Blossom Classic. You I hear how Coach Oliver speaks about his conference and how his attitude is to it, and I feel like this didn't come from anywhere, but just hearing him speak, I feel like these type of games mean more to him because it's about MEAC supremacy. Do you feel something similar as far as saying, "Hey, we're the top dog as far as conference wise in Black college football" when you have these games against the MEAC?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of goes to I always tell people you have a philosophy and an identity. The philosophy is what you think you are. That's what you put on paper. That's what we're trying to do. Then your identity is what's on film. That's what just happened. And so for us, and I think the SWAC conference, I say us like all of the SWAC teams. Historically, the SWAC conference. If you look at the number of Hall of Famers we have, number of guys going to the NFL, all of those type of things. I mean, the SWAC was always the preeminent HBCU college conference for football. And the
Mhm.
MEAC was, in my opinion, always a little bit behind us. I'm talking about 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, stuff like that.
Right.
And then there was the switch where the MEAC really kind of turned it on. You had that run with North Carolina A&T, South Carolina State had a good run. Hampton was really good. So so it was just one of those things where the MEAC was getting the better of us. You just look at the MEAC SWAC challenge. Just look at the record. I mean, they were winning like 11-2 at one point, 11-3,
Mhm.
in which we won the last two. And so it has to have a level of importance to you, just from a standpoint when you're a SWAC school and you're playing out of conference schools, you got to get W's. You
Yeah.
have to get back to that level. And now we're working to get there. And so, but then still the last couple of years, Jackson State lost the last couple celebration bowls, and Trey did a great job with getting North Carolina Central ready to win that game, and then South Carolina State did it the next year. So for us, and I say us like the SWAC conference, yeah, this is a big game for us. And so I have the same sense of urgency he has to win the game to represent the MEAC. I have that exact same sense of urgency for us to win the game to represent the SWAC. And I think that's the beauty of the game. He went to North Carolina Central, so he's not just playing for coaching for Central, he's coaching for the MEAC as he should. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm a SWAC guy, and I'm coaching for the SWAC as much as I'm coaching from Alabama State. And so that should make it a fun matchup because we both really want to win this game. Besides it's the first game of the year, and it's a MEAC school, and we want to show that the SWAC is better, and that's what
Right.
we're going
For
to
sure.
do. And it gives us the opportunity to go out there and do it. But that's what we're going out there for. We're going out there to win the game first and foremost, but then to represent Alabama State and represent the SWAC conference.
I'm since I got you here, I always got things I always wanted to ask you, man. Like the Shrine Bowl was what, 4 months prior to this? This more than that. It's been a while. It's been a while. So I've been thinking
Yeah.
about this interview. A lot of people make the whole what is SWAC thing a thing, right? It's been over a year. Did you think that would carry on? Or because to me, I thought it was going to be a moment, but I didn't think it was going to be as long lasting as it's been.
No, it caught me off guard. I didn't even think it was going to last till the time I went to the tailgate after the game. Keep in mind that was homecoming. I was obviously upset. And
Mhm.
so it was just something that I said. I've said it 100 times before. I mean, I can go all the way back to when Steve McNair was in the locker room with the Oilers. And, Steve
Mhm.
had a SWAC tattoo on. He was 100% SWAC, and so
Mhm.
we would go around, and when the guy would make a good play on another team, it was Ashley Ambrose who were with the coach at the time out of Mississippi Valley, or Aeneas Williams. He made an interception. We were watching the film. We had, man, that's SWAC right there. That's SWAC.
Yeah.
I'm SWAC. Man, that's what we would say. And when we would greet somebody, what's up, SWAC? How you doing? And then occasionally you would have a Chris Dishman one of those guys, a Bubba McDowell. Hey man, I'm SWAC. Nah, man, you ain't SWAC. You ain't go to SWAC school. You can't say that. Now, if you went to HBCU, we would allow you to say it. So
Mhm.
it really goes like way back. It's not something that I just created that night. That's why I was
No.
so comfortable with saying it. And so, but to answer your question, I felt like by the next morning it would have cycled off the news channel, but I guess it wasn't much else to talk about. And then of course you have, with the megaphone that Deion Sanders has with everybody, loving Coach Prime. I think that's what really made it go. And we got to give him credit too, because for him to come back with the song with "Who Is SWAC" like within less than 24 hours, I was like, man, this is it was. I mean, I'm sure that that got it going as much as
Yeah.
everything, but it's been pretty cool that everybody is still on it and people kind of get it. People that went to HBCU, if they went to a SWAC school or a MEAC school, SIAC, they kind of get it. Like they know exactly.
Right.
They don't have to ask me what did you mean. They know what I meant. They totally understand. So.
Yeah, and I saw how regular it was because when I called Coach James, or when Coach James called me for the first time, he said, "What up, Swag?" I said,
What's up, SWAC?
"It,
Exactly.
it was regular, but it became
Yeah.
this huge moment, and it's carried on. And uh, would you do anything different if you knew where it was going to be today? Like, would you just been like, I'm just going to leave it alone?
Nah, it had to be said. I think it was just just
There's a moment
you
and you
know,
in emotion.
yeah, it was just a moment. I think it was, football is an emotional game. And I think what happens, and I tell my kids this, which is why after the games, people don't realize, we're normal people. We're normal.
Right.
Like you can't take all of the energy it takes to be a football player and a football coach. You can't take that to Walmart on Friday. You know what I'm saying? You can't go to the grocery store on Monday because you're gonna want to skip the line and hit somebody with your basket. So you have to get down to be like a normal, regular citizen. All right. But then
Mhm.
when it comes to football, you got to really be a different person. So after the games, I've had plenty NFL games where I played 70, 80 plays, and I mean, I'm exhausted, but I'm laying in the bed and I cannot go to sleep. Like my adrenaline level is still like way
Yeah.
high. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
you just reviewing like everything that went through your head. It's like, I guess the most I could relate it to the average person. If you were in a car accident and you felt like you were close to dying and it was a big, but then you were okay. And so you go home that night and the whole night you're just thinking about, man, what happened? So it's kind of like that. So after that game, I'm still like up. You know what I'm saying? Just
Yeah.
because the game over and you sit down and you may physically get your heart rate down, but you're still in the moment for like quite some time until you probably the next morning when you kind of really settle down and get back to being a normal person again.
Man, look, I ain't gonna spend too much time on it. I think too much time spent on it already. But I did want to ask you that because I got you here, and
All right.
this is when we ask these type of questions. But let's move forward and really do lean into the game that you have coming up. You got North Carolina Central. I want to ask you about that game a little bit more, and then also ask you about the rest of the season as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Early mornings, maybe you have to, forget it. We talk about early mornings and early afternoons. But what about when you in school? Or what about when you have to pull an all-nighter, a night shift, or some of the sort, right? Because I know we have college students. I know we have people all the way in their profession and everything in between. Either one of those things. 5 Hour Energy is perfect for you, right? And you don't have to worry about lugging around a big jug or having a big bottle. It's a very small, portable, convenient size, right? About the size of my hands if you're on the video side. You take that, boom, take a quick shot of it, and you're good for the next 5 hours. That's going to help you push through any kind of all-nighter that you have to pull as far as studying or preparing for a business meeting. Maybe I have to prepare for an interview and I'm like, man, I got to get these questions correct because it's early in the morning. 5 Hour Energy is ready and prepared to help me with all of those things to get my tasks done. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my code locked on CFB to get 20% off your first order. It's only valid until September 30th, and you can't pair it with another promotion. It's only valid on one order. So go to 5hourenergy.com. That is 5hourenergy.com today. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. We got Eddie Robinson Jr., head coach of Alabama State, here with us. Thank you again for coming on. I had Coach James a little bit ago. Now we got you coming on in preparation for the Orange Blossom Classic. And, how difficult is it preparing for the first game of the season when you don't have as much tape on this current rendition of a team as opposed to week 5, 6? You didn't seen who this guy or who these players are by then.
Well, I think Coach Oliver talked about it the same way. The first game is the first game, and with the transfer portal and the turnover in college football, it's a whole lot of guys. It could be a wide receiver that we haven't seen. You got to watch him in warm up. It's kind of like the old playing in the neighborhood. You're just watching and say, hey man, they look pretty big. Oh man, they may be tough. That type of stuff. And so we know a lot of the guys. They know a lot of our guys, the returns. But at the same time, it is an element of what exactly are they going to do? What type of changes they may have made from the last year. And so the biggest thing is you have to work on yourself. You got to make sure that you're really good at what you do and you understand, your scheme, and then be able to make adjustments real quick if it comes to that. But the biggest thing is just making sure that you're covering all the bases as a coach. And we do a lot of situational football. So right now, we're covering a lot of different situations. Hey, backed up punt, taking a safety, the onside kick. How do you prepare for onside kick? Who can recover an onside kick? So all of those type of things, and half of them will not happen in the first game. But as a coach, you don't want anything to happen in that game, and you can't say I prepared my team for it. I didn't do a period of it. We didn't practice it. So that's the thing for me. I'm big on being prepared. If you're prepared, then I think it puts you in the mindset of to go out there knowing that I have a great opportunity to win. And then you just got to add the physical part of it. And then football is football. Sometimes it bounces your way, sometimes it doesn't. But that's why you get 60 minutes. You just play hard the whole time, and you get more breaks than you lose.
So let's focus on you then. Let's take North Carolina Central out of it and focus on yourself. I was talking to Gerald Huggins, right? Draft HBCU frequent collaborator on the show. And he said that this is the best defense that you've had. And he felt confident in saying that this is the best defense that you've had since being at Alabama State. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, we'll see. I feel like talent-wise, we're probably a little bit better than last year. And so defense is such an attitude. Is a lot of it is I'm in position to make that tackle, but how bad do I want to make that tackle? How hard do I want to run the ball? And so I think that part becomes contagious. You got to see one guy with a big hit, and then everybody has to want it. And so you really have to have 11 guys fighting to make a tackle. It's like whoever makes this next tackle gets a prize, and they all have to be fighting to make that tackle, and only one person gets the prize. And if you can have that type of attitude where everybody believes in each other, nobody cares if you make the interception, they're all happy. If I get the fumble, we're all happy. And that's something that goes from friendship, liking each other, having camaraderie, that type of stuff. So this team is a really close bonded team. I think much more so than the first 2 years. And so now if you have that type of healthy competition where we're competing to see who played, but at the same time, I'm rooting for you to make that sack just like I'm hoping I get a chance to make one. And so I think that gives us a chance to be better than we were the last 2 years.
I want to ask you this from your coaching or from your playing days. What game did you always have circled on the schedule? Every year I'm circling this game. Or did it change year by year?
Well, for us, I think the Magic City Classic is always the biggest game. For me, I tell the guys that's the biggest game of the year. So I love that game. I think for us, when we were playing Jackson State, they were such bullies in the SWAC back then. They had won like 28 straight SWAC games. And so, and all of our coaches that came from Jackson State, I think 3 of our coaches was players there. Coach Markham used to coach there. So we were circling Jackson State as the team that we had to beat because they had won the SWAC championship 4 straight years and had not lost a SWAC game in 4 years. So I think everybody had Jackson State circled. You know what I'm saying? They were just dominating the conference. But the Magic City Classic was always and it has been a huge game for us. I think us going into this season, in the last 2 seasons, I think you always circle that Magic City Classic. It's just a beautiful game. Just a great time to be in Birmingham. Everybody gets involved with it. The whole city does for the whole week. And it's just a fun game to play in and coach.
You said how back in the day, outside of the Magic City Classic, you would circle that Jackson State game. Now, it was pretty easy for you to say you did that as a player. But when you asked the coach, hey, what game y'all got circled on the schedule, coach? We just the next game, the most important game. I'm just trying to make sure. The most important game that we got circled is week 1. I'm just worried about North Carolina. Why is that such a different answer? You know,
No,
like why can't we
I
just
don't.
say what it is?
No, I'm not gonna give you that answer. The
I know
Magic
you're not.
City,
But why?
the
Why
Magic
y'all
City
can't say what it
Classic
is?
is the most important game of the year. I tell everybody that the Magic City Classic, like that's the game. Not to the locals, because the Turkey Day Classic, we're coming on the 100th Turkey Day Classic, and we're
Mhm,
playing Tuskegee. It's the oldest historically black college classic. So
mhm.
for the locals who have grown up in Montgomery, since kids, since the 1950s and 60s, the Turkey Day Classic, that's their game. Now, and if you're playing Tuskegee, is absolutely you have to beat Tuskegee. I'm talking about back to when Booker T. Washington was at Tuskegee. That's how far back this game goes. And so it's a lot of history in the African American community here in Montgomery over the Turkey Day Classic. But for me, it's the Magic City Classic. That's just the biggest game. Now of
I
course,
respect that.
I'll go to my scripted answer. The next game is the most important game, and nobody, trust me, I'm not even thinking about A&M. I hope they win this week. That's all I can say. You know what I'm saying? But
Mhm, of
I
course.
can care less what they're doing right now. We're 100% focused on Central. But just looking at the schedule, I mean, once you get to that game, you get 2 weeks to prepare. It's just a big week around campus.
Last question before I get you out here. Actually, two more. I want to talk about this pendant behind me. But what is it called? The crest behind me. But look, Alabama State has more expectations on them this year than they've had in your tenure with the Hornets. How are you guys dealing with being projected as the best team in the SWAC East?
Yeah, man, I love it. I mean, I think it's where you want to be. Who wants to be picked to finish last? You know what I'm
Of course.
saying? That would be motivation too. We would pick to finish last. Like, hey, man, those guys don't respect that type of stuff. So I think being picked to finish first is just you go out there and play football. But trust me, if we achieve the expectations that we have on ourselves on the team as a team, and the expectations that I have for this team, we will far exceed all of the expectations that anybody else has picked for us. And so we have very high goals. And I tell the kids, hey, set high goals, speak it, put it into existence. Because once you say it, now you have to work hard to achieve it. If you say, hey, I want to have 8 interceptions and lead the conference, well, get up in your defensive meeting and tell everybody, my goal is to have 8 interceptions and lead the conference. So you know what? Now you put yourself on blast. Now you got to go out there and work, because if not, people are going to be critical. Like, well, how come you have a goal and a dream, but now your work ethic doesn't match your dream? And so what I tell our kids, hey, we set a goal, we set a dream, but now we have to have the work ethic to match it, because if not, we won't have an opportunity to achieve it. And that's the biggest thing for us is just, as long as I see that the guys are working towards it and we're giving everything we can as players and coaches, and at that point, you can never be disappointed in the outcome. You may not like the outcome, but you won't be disappointed in it, because you know you've done everything you can do. Like, football is like life. Nobody can guarantee that their team is going to win a championship, even if you are on paper the better team. Because I've been on plenty of playoff teams when we weren't the better team and then we won. And unfortunately, I've been on some playoff teams where we were the better team and then we didn't get the job done. And that's what I love about football, that it's such a work ethic sport. If you put in the work, you will always have a chance to win the football game.
Now, I'm gonna go ahead and take this down, move the microphone with me. Now, I never miss an opportunity, though I claim to be from Texas because it's why I was raised pretty much my entire life. I never missed the opportunity to tell people. And I was born in Louisiana. I was born in Kenner, right? So I'm
Okay.
not that too far. But you, New Orleans, right? So we talked about this. You said you had something you want to talk about. I'm just gonna hold it up. They don't need to see me. They see me every day. Go ahead, coach.
Absolutely. So I mean, that's who that nation, and
Already.
I've been the same season ticket holder. Like I said, my dad grew up working at the Superdome, and I go back from the. It was a joke that the Saints would win a Super Bowl, and even when I was playing in the NFL for 11 years, I'm still always rooting for the Saints to make it to the Super Bowl. And I promised myself, if the Saints ever made it to the Super Bowl, I would be at the game. So I took my mom. We went to the game in Miami when we won the Super Bowl in 2009, and just hoping to get back. I mean, I was at the game when the Rams had the bad call, and we walked out the Superdome sad, crying, wondering if maybe we can sue the NFL and get them to change the call. But it's been it's just I always wear my Saints hat, and the good thing, it matches my black and gold with ASU. And so most time I'm either have on my ASU hat or a Saints hat. But I'll say this, man. And when I first saw your show, um, just flipping on YouTube, picking up the podcast, I'm like, oh man, this brother got a TSU flag and he got a Saints flag. So you had my attention right there. And most people don't know. When I graduated, well, when I left Alabama State, I had like 2 more classes to finish my chemistry degree. And Dr. Booker, he knew Dr. Maryland, who was my professor and dean here at Alabama State. So I was able to take my last 2 classes at Texas Southern. Had a great time hanging out with the Qs on Blodgett Street, and so back in Third Ward. And so, I mean, I've lived most of my adult life in Houston, probably other than about 8 years when I went to Jacksonville and Nashville. But then I moved back to Houston after that and raised my kids there. So I love the city of Houston, man. I love Texas Southern. It's a great university. I took a couple classes there, and it's just a great city. And then when I saw the TSU flag and the New Orleans flag, then you had me as a fan. I was like and subscribe from there. But then you had to, like I tell the kids, that just got you in the door. But then you do a great job of doing with your content and with different guests. So then, I'm always a fan. You're doing a great job. So man, definitely keep it up.
I appreciate it. Hey, and y'all don't play TSU this year. I can root for you
No,
every
we
game.
don't. That's why I love TSU so much this year. It's like so
I can root for you every game.
I'm like, let's go Tigers, But when we play them, then of course, not. I'm gonna tell you a funny story, man. We went down there my first year, but that was because we didn't play them the last 2 years. And of course, James Williams, great friend, man. We met on the SWAC tour as juniors, and we went both years. And he's from Baton Rouge. I'm from New Orleans, and so then he was at Texas Southern. I was at Alabama State. We played together, played against it all 4 years. Then we were together with the Oilers, and always remained friends. So then when I got the job here, he came to coach and just has done a great job. So then we're playing Texas Southern. And we end up winning the game. Close game, we pull it out at the end. And so then the Alabama State, we're playing the Alabama State alma mater. And so I'm like, James, what it feel like to beat your own school, man? So he never lets me live that down. He said, man, I had my hand in the air, but I was crying on the inside.
Coach James, that's my guy, man. I rock with him. He all right, man. Look, you too. Saints fan, couple classes at TSU, all around solid guy. We appreciate you. Genuinely.
Absolutely,
I genuinely do. We got to find some time either sometime in the bye week, or after the season, we got to come back on and recap it and do this again because it was a pleasure. Genuinely. I appreciate you. Go ahead and follow him at erob50 on Twitter. You don't play TSU, so good luck all year, man.
Exactly. and put it like this: if we play TSU, we're both in the SWAC championship game, and we're both happy. So there you have it.
I can tell you right now, exactly. I will be there if TSU makes the SWAC championship. I will be present. I don't care if it's in Montgomery. I don't care if it's in Houston. I prefer to be in Houston. It's a shorter drive for me, but I will be present. But thank you. And thank everybody for listening. I hope everybody enjoyed this. We're doing a live chat. Hope everybody is talking it up and enjoying this. I'll be there watching. I'll be checking out. I probably ain't talking too much. But in the meantime, in between time, till next time we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.